when you see that. At the same token, if we did not do that, it probably meant their lives. Because without the employment, there was no safety net, and they would probably perish. I mean, I saw families, I saw a lot of things that still bother me, but I saw families with a bag of stones, maybe a family of 5 or 6 people, and that bag represented their house. So at night, when they were ready to turn in, they found a place, someplace in the slum, they put these stones around in a circle or some type of pattern, and that designated their house for the night. Nobody could go in past those stones. I mean, that's the type of poverty that is throughout the world. So when we take a look at trying to develop in these parts of the world, it's important both for business purposes, but also morally. I mean, you're changing people's lives, and that's important. It's a beautiful country. That's Lake Ohrid. That's one of the small chapels that Alexander built. It's always a 1 or 2 person chapel, and they had hundreds of them all over the place. I guess when we felt like going to church, we had a place to go. A lot of Byzantine architecture, more statues, open markets. Here, there's still a gypsy population here, which is pretty poor population. That's what they're trying to, not by force, but by education, trying to get these people out of this begging mode. Now, some countries will gather up these people and send them away so they're not visible. Macedonia doesn't do that. They're trying to educate these people, so in a way I feel very good about doing business in this country as compared to some of the other places I've been to. This is this city, lakeside city of Ohrid. It's really pleasant. I mean, if you've ever been along the Riviera or something like that, it's not dissimilar. So this is a big tourist trade opportunity, but they have to be very careful from tourist trade of their assets. There's only so much land, and if you're going to sell it to somebody who wants to build a condominium, it helps you once. It doesn't really help you a lot down the road, because once it's sold, it's sold. So they're looking for resorts and hotels and things like that, which have a repeated cash exchange for them. And I think they're going to be successful, because it is beautiful. And it's not that hard. Well, it's kind of hard to get there now, because you got to fly. There's some place to fly to Istanbul to get there. I mean, you can't get there by going there. You got to go several other places. Takes about 20 hours, 24 hours of flight time to get there. So that's a little bit cumbersome. Not for the Europeans, but for us who live in Detroit. You go to Amsterdam, you go to Istanbul, and then you go to Macedonia. So, do we have questions or anything? Yes, sir.
It sounds like a pretty ideal place to start or build your company, but was there any political backlash at all? Any of maybe an isolationist party, something political, anything like that?
Not that we detected because of our presence or what they're doing. There was an uprising, not an uprising, there was a conflict with the Albanians. They thought they were losing their, and about maybe 20%, 30% of the population's Muslim Albanians, and they thought they were losing their cultural identity. And so Nikola the Ruski made a pact with them. There was a little bit of a conflict, but maybe like a day or two, a demonstration, and I think maybe a couple of people were killed, but they weren't sure whether that was associated with some other activity or not. And he worked it out, smoothed it over, and there's no issues. So I think these guys and girls are really keen on not letting ideals get in the way to logic, and they really want to keep peace. And that's really important there. And that's one of the reasons why we felt the government really were in tune with the people, and we felt good about it.
Do you see a large difference in your cultures and ethics from country to country and factory to factory, as they're all in?
You know, over time they blend, but when you start, there are some differences. I'm trying to think of a couple. We had some factories in Brazil, Santo Amaro, outside of Sao Paulo, and there in Brazil they had no safety regulations. And when I finally was sent down there to make I was just about appalled. But I have to say, the company I was working for at the time, as soon as I told them, I mean, they had people plating parts, and they were just dipping them, standing over these vats, breathing this stuff, dipping the parts in there. Now, it had various different acids that if it rained and water got into it, it would explode, and they would all be dead in a matter of minutes. I'm sitting there, and so I write back to my bosses in Detroit at the time, and I said, you know, this can't. They said, oh, we're not going to spend money on that. And so I took pictures of all the people, and I also took a picture of, I pulled out of, I didn't have the internet at the time, but I pulled a picture of a genocide that took place someplace else, and I showed it to the board, not the board, but senior management. Said, this is what it looks like today, and this is what it could look like tomorrow. Like that, you fixed it. Most of them, most everybody we go to, and we, you know, we've been into China, which is pretty much becoming industrialized. We have a culture, and they now have unions, and now driving the cost up. But the quality of the work that we're getting is good. The same in Mexico, the quality of the work. People think somehow they have it in their mind that if you operate high tech in Mexico, it's somehow poor quality. But we get some of the best quality and a lot of innovation. So our experience in Mexico, other than the fact that we can't drive SUVs between factories during the night, or we might get kidnapped, other than that, you know, there's not much of a difference. And in fact, they're pretty aggressive at making product improvements. Now the Mexicans, they don't have unions like we have unions. They have it's more like area organizations. So then they sit down with the company management, and they negotiate rates that are multi-company wide. And so I don't know, about 6 years ago, they came to us and said, we want to cut our pay. We want to cut our expenses, and they cut it 40%, voluntarily, without us having any type of guaranteed employment or anything. There was no strings to it. They just came to us and they said, because we know China's coming and we're going to lose to China, because a lot of Mexican factories are being shut down to go to China. And the ones that had low quality labor, you know, low investment, low skilled labor were going quick. The ones with a little bit more investment were going slower, but they were going to head that way. So they came up and voluntarily took a cut, and we ended up moving factories out of China back into Mexico. And but that was their observation, which were, again, pretty astute on their part. And we have about 3,000 employees down there now, and it's worked out very well.
I might have misheard you earlier at the beginning of the presentation. Did you say Connect is currently in 16 countries and is soon in 20?
We are in 20, well, we're in 16, manufacturing in 16 countries. Now we're consolidating some, but we're leaving R&D centers, research centers in the countries that we are bringing manufacturing out of. When we bought NEC Token, part of a big part of NEC, and we acquired that last year. We have 51% management control and 33% financial control, which meant we can't consolidate the finances. We can report the profit we get out of that venture but we can't bring the revenue or claim the employees or anything else. Now, our purchase agreement, which is pretty complex, has us buying the financial control out over a period of years. Actually, it was pretty slick on our part, because when you, particularly a Japanese company, it's very hard to do a deal with Japanese. But when you acquire one of their companies, you will find that they are very much over-labored. They just have costs that come out of your ears, and they typically aren't making a lot of money. And the parent company is constantly throwing cash at them. So the first year or two, you have to go through some pretty expensive costs to rationalize what you just bought, to bring it to world standards. So the fact that NEC owns 33, we have control over the decisions, but they own 66% of the cost right now. So then we'll pick up another 33% in a year or so, and another 33% the year after that. So we'll have full financial control after all the costs are been spent. So I thought it was pretty slick on our part. One other thing in that transaction, that was a $700 million a year company that we acquired. Right in the middle, you can't do things fast in Japan. You can't acquire a company rapidly in Japan. It takes you years. During the course of our negotiation, their biggest factory in Thailand was outside of Bangkok and got flooded entirely. A $250 million factory was wasted entirely, 100% gone, in the middle of our negotiations. So we're sitting there saying, my gosh, what do we do? How do we change the price? Is it still worth buying? And we continued with the transaction. And what amazed me was, as soon as within a week or two after the flood abated, and everybody got in, and the assessment was the equipment was zero. Talk about $250 million worth of investment. The insurance company started paying. And with our help, we built another factory within 1 year that replaced that factory. In 1 year from the flood to the time that factory was operating, in 1 year, because it was 18 meters higher in land, so we didn't have another flood. We went from the 100-year flood plain to a 1,000-year flood plain to flood that way better.
Could you speak to the educational requirements when you advertise for labor? What are you requiring, and how do they help you with the training of these individuals?
Well, most of these individuals have not had this type of employment. Most of them, there's a pretty young population, and most of them are just coming out of schools, various different types of schools. So the training is pretty much as to how to operate machinery and how to work in pretty much our training, because they don't have that experience yet. Now what they want to do is build a pool of these employees, and in fact all the employers are encouraging that, so that there is, even though you might lose employees to other companies, that there's always a pool to be able to tap for different projects and different things. So we look for people that have basic rudimentary skills, because we can't bank on experience at this point. And that's hard. That's a crapshoot. You bring somebody on board without experience. You don't have a record, but we have not had any negative experiences at all with this particular group. They all are eager to learn. They're all eager to put into practice what they know. They're all eager to practice their English skills and stuff like that. When I walk through the factory, you could walk up to anybody and you could have a decent conversation with them. And it's not a matter that they're fluent in English. It's a matter that they're confident in themselves. They enjoy what they're doing, and they feel at ease. They don't think that, this is a test that I'm going to get fired if I don't give the right answer, therefore they try to avoid you. It's a pretty open facility. So this is kind of unique in that regard.
I want to follow up to ask the question, is there an idea that a polytechnic institute could give some of the training for a pool of these individuals so that different companies in the same industry or sufficiently similar could benefit from these individuals being trained within the
Yes, and in fact, they're trying to build, in fact, one of my tasks from the Macedonian side is to make more contacts within the automotive second tier suppliers to invite them over. Johnson Controls is primarily an automotive product. It's seat covers, not real high-tech stuff. but in employment and so forth, they have about 1,000 employees. Johnson Matthey's is also automotive related, to Bosch and a few other companies. And so there's kind of a thought of a pool of automotive having some central, and the JC is working, as we are, working with the university to develop some programs that are kind of slanted towards what the future employment needs may be. And that's just common sense, and they're eager to pick that up. We're eager. Now, the downside is that if we get too automotive centric, then you're going to go up and down with that industry. We all know that is a cyclical industry. Everywhere in the world, it seems like the entire world, automotive goes down or goes up together in unison. So we were particularly attractive because we supply products to every possible industry that you can imagine. When I first joined Kemet as a director, we really pressed, they were really, their customer base was American-centric, a little bit of Asia. The manufacturing was all North America. We made a 5-year plan, and now a third of our revenue comes from Europe, a third from Asia, and a third from the U.S. We were centric on about 3 different industries. Now we're spread across, fairly evenly across medical, defense, automotive, consumer, electronics, things of that nature. So we've done a job to really soften our impact. In fact, I can look at some of the Kemet reports and I get a real flavor of what the world economy is doing, because we have our fingers in, I mean, if sales are going up in Europe fast, well, it's pretty consistent with European economy picking up, because we're across all the industries. And the same in the U.S. Right now, the U.S. economy is jumping, not astronomically, but is moving faster than Europe or Asia in its growth from our customer base. And you saw we had a pretty good set of names in our customer base. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the cost for labor here was about $4.
Right.
What kind of purchasing power does that give these guys?
It's a good question, and it's pretty. To me, it's geez, $4. How can you can't buy a Big Mac? Pretty low. But everything else, the cost of living there is lower throughout, but people find ways to cope with that. They live with their parents. They have multiple families in the house. Both spouses work if they have the work available. They don't own a lot of cars, and they don't have, they have maybe one TV set, where I think I have a dozen or something like that. And, there's things of that nature. They cope with what they have available, and they live fairly decent lives. But having this job, even if it's $4 an hour, can take them from discernibly one level of quality of life to another level. And then hopefully the kids will get something much better than that.
Since you mentioned that, there's an index called the Big Mac Index. Is there a McDonald's there?
No, not yet. When I traveled, before I retired, I traveled the world, and I could use the price of a Big Mac to get my exchange rate. If I didn't have the exchange rate in front of me, I could tell that's so many pounds, and that's so many krona, I knew exactly what, because it's I was at the first McDonald's that opened up in Russia back in the 90s in Moscow, and I figured the pricing would be, but it was on the official exchange rate. It was consistent. Now, in the black market exchange rate, it was 10 times different. You could buy a Big Mac for a dime. On the official exchange, it's $1.80 or whatever it was back then. But I could go anywhere in the world and have a Big Mac virtually. Although I've been through Africa, and there's not too many there. Rwanda doesn't have too many Big Macs. Not yet.
Is the $4 wage rate competitive with the labor factors?
It's a bit higher. We wanna be a bit higher. It saves morale, productivity is better, stability of the workforce is better. Whereas some of the guys that are next to us don't like that. But right now, it's not really an issue because there's enough labor. But as soon as the labor tightens up a bit, with 2.2 million people, it could tighten up in 3-4 years, and it could be a jump. But we're highly automated, and so even though labor costs are low, it's not really assembly labor as with the machine operator labor, and they could put out a lot of productivity because of the machine. So if their costs go up 10%, doesn't mean our product cost goes up 10%, because it's leverage. Now, if you're sewing things together and 90% of your product cost was labor, then if labor went up 10%, then your product cost got. So there's an advantage of having a high-tech capability and a highly automated capability for development.
With your employees coming out of school, did you mean like a K-12 or university?
University. They're almost all coming out of university. They have some trade schools, which we pulled some out, but almost all of them are. When you have that level of unemployment, you have that young of a workforce, if they don't have a choice, they either leave the country or they go to school. And so there's plenty of graduates coming out of school that we're plucking out and putting to work. And we encourage them to continue their education. We have programs, just like we have with every place else, to help them continue their education. So there's plenty of that.
You mentioned it's like 6.8% of the GDP goes towards education. Now, does that go towards the facilities themselves, or is it put towards the students, like in terms of universal education?
I don't know the full answer to that.
Okay.
In fact, it's a good question. I think it's, I think the education predominantly is, free, so to speak, and it goes to the universities directly at this point. Now, that's going to change, as they can't, well, a number of factors can change that. But that will stay. Right now, they can't afford to pay a tuition because there is no income. So the income they have is through the government, maybe on some social services. So government, why not pay the school, let the kid go there, or the person go there for free, so to speak, and it's just a more efficient way of moving money around.
How much does kind of do in terms of like annual revenue? When you said 55 million.
We do about 800 million right now.
Okay.
And with the addition of we'll almost double our size with the addition of token. We were up as high as $1 billion before the crash. It really hit us pretty hard. But we're about 800 million now. We've struggled with profitability, mainly because of the average selling price of our products have been under a lot of pressure. Different technologies coming out, so we have to keep on advancing our technology. One of the things we did do was increase our R&D expenditures as a percent of revenue. When I first got there, they were spending about like 1%, and I think we can't keep up. Now we spend about 5 to 7%, which is more than adequate, because we do leverage the technology quite a bit. But the way American companies can survive is being global, having a unique, very unique product that nobody else can replicate, or pushing the hell out of technology. In a previous life, I managed 12 companies, portfolio companies. I started Northrop Grumman, and I ran there, and all 12 companies were, when I took over, was just basically break even or losing money, and just kind of there. Northrop didn't really care that much because these were commercial companies. There are names like Kester, Synoptics, Polyscientific, or Winchester Electronics, names that you probably don't recognize, but were well recognized within businesses. They were just kind of like followers. As soon as we, across the board, every single one of them had to go within 3 to 4 years to be a leader in technology. And their profit margin went to 15% net income. And they grew like a rocket. And you bring, if you want to compete purely on labor, it's not going to work, not here. So you've got to find efficiency in channel like Dell did, very efficient channel. Now they're being challenged. But the technology, I mean, it was a great job. I loved the job because Synoptics, they grew crystals. Their job was to grow crystals for laser applications. Medical, industrial, tattoo removal, which is going to be a big industry. And Polyscientific made miniature motors, high performance miniature motors. Winchester made ultimately ultra high speed electronic connectors, stuff like that. But they all moved to be technology leaders. And in technology, you get your margins on the products you're producing. If you're the first guy to the market and you own that market for a while, you get 95% gross margin on the product. I mean, we were selling the Pentium, this is back a decade or so ago. Pentium is probably before you were born, but we sold a special device, which is probably still proprietary, to Intel, and it cost us like we made 99% gross margin on that product. So that's because we had the technology nobody else knew how to work with the material or the provider material. And we make a ton of money. When I was in the PC business, a PC, a personal computer, this is in late 90s, so it's dated now. But a personal computer in production lasted 90 days before you had to replace it with a new product. 90 days. So you designed something, it was in production 90 days. That first 30 days you made 90% of the margin that you're ever going to make in that product. The second 30 days you made the other 10%, and the last 30 days you were lucky to break even. So you had to really, the key there is pumping new products in there and keep advancing the technology. And that's a whole different process than a lot of other processes in the way you did business. But if you were the technology leader, you were in that 30-day zone all the time. And we happened to be at the time. We were always the technology leaders, and we got that big margin off of very volatile products.